This is Billy Mitchell's actual Twitter account, and here he posts this message from Karl. I'm gonna read it off. So someone asks him, do you ever run scripts for videos like this past a lawyer, or is it not worth the expense? Karl responds quite calmly, no, I don't, because f lawyers and what they think. If I want to say something, I will say it. F letting other people tell you what to do. A lawyer will always tell you to say nothing. Who wants to live by that principle? So I made a video talking about Karl Jobst losing the court case to Billy Mitchell. Now I'm talking about it again because there's been a few updates and it's really changed my point of view on the subject. See, over the last week, people have started reading through the court documents of the case that had finished up with Karl and Billy. There were some very interesting things they found in those documents, like the judge talking about Karl and how arrogant and self-aggrandizing he was during the trial. But more than that, Karl has been in his Discord having an absolute crash out after losing, and it looks really bad. But before we do that, I need to jump into the typical YouTuber begging you to subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe. Like, I'm down on my knees right now. You don't even have to do it forever. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. Even if you don't like me later, you can just unsub later. It's totally cool. Also, if you like this video, it kind of like cheats the algorithm and gets it out to more people. Even if you don't like the video, you just want to force other people to watch me and then leave bad comments. If you like it, there's a higher chance of that, and more people will upvote your comments talking about how terrible I am. And that's a pretty good deal. So to kick things off, I want to show you guys this Reddit post first. Karl Jobst responds to court loss, slams judge's ruling, and explains his plan to appeal. This is a screenshot of Karl Jobst's Discord, which I unfortunately was not able to get access to myself in order to find these messages. But thankfully, enough people were in there and they've been able to screenshot some of the interesting things that Karl has been talking about. Also, just so you're not jump scared by how monotone it sounds, I am now going to attempt an impression of Karl every time I read one of his messages. But somebody is messaging in the Discord and they say, hate Billy, sure, but I don't think it's exactly fair to attack the judge, as he seemed like he did try to rule fairly in the context of the law. Unfortunately, Billy's team just played the game better. I don't want this comment to be misconstrued as Billy support, but I've seen a lot of chatter against the judge on various places, not as much here, and I feel that misses the mark. Karl disagrees with this and goes on to say, oh, the judge was ridiculous in his judgment. You'd have to look at previous cases with similar awards. They all have doctors' testimonies backing up any health, harm, etc., or specialists confirmed XYZ. Billy just said he was hurt. That is absolutely not sufficient for an award this high, and there was clear bias. He unnecessarily attacked me many times for things that had nothing to do with the complaint. I haven't read through his other cases, just the doc. Karl goes on to say, there was a similar award last year, but the guy had multiple doctor testimonies who diagnosed multiple health issues due to the statements, etc. And he'd been seeing doctors for years about it. It is ridiculous to just go and say you were hurt without any expert testimony and get this kind of judgment. It had nothing to do with the reality other than the judge wanted to make an example out of me, which was not a justifiable reason. Was that a good impression? Was that dumb? Should I try that more in the future? I'm probably gonna try that more in the future. But to be serious for a moment, Karl talking about his belief that the judge had a clear bias against Karl. And from what we understand, there's a lot of reason for that, as the judge brings it up in the court case and the documents, and it's been recorded. But before we jump to the court document, I also just want to show you guys a few of the messages that people had screenshotted of Karl that make him look a bit silly. This one also came from OP and says, it seems he's under the impression that the appeals process won't cost much and only takes a day. I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like there would be a lot of billable hours before that one-day hearing. This is a screenshot of Karl responding to someone saying, but lawyer costs will double if you appeal, right? And he says, no, the appeal is just like a one-day hearing. I don't know much about law, but I don't think that's it. Well, he follows up that comment with this one literally just the next day, saying, an entire appeals process would take a year, but I don't think mob is upset with the judge's decision per se, just their recollection of events, which I can correct. So here, it appears that he figured out that the entire appeals process would not just be a one-day thing and would take a year. So I'm glad he got that out of his system and figured out a bit more info on that. I just want to show you a few more messages. This little chain has to do with how Karl was talking about his lawyers after the verdict had come out about, him losing the court case. He's messaging people and he says, they thought they were going to win easily because Billy is a liar and his case is stupid. Someone else replies, damn, Karl's lawyer's brains were full of balls. And then Karl responds they were complacent because they thought they were going to win. Someone else saying Billy meanwhile throws everything at the wall. Karl follows up saying, but the judge just lapped up everything Billy gave him. He continues on to talk badly of his lawyers by saying, I even suggested to my lawyers I show those emails, and they didn't care. Like seriously, they really didn't value my input much. It was pretty f***ed. Following that up, this is why in my response vid I will show emails from me to my lawyer when I say I want this to get as many views as possible, as I was making the vid for the retraction. That's super good. Clearly Karl knows better than his lawyers that he paid an exorbitant amount of money to, defend him and fail to do so. Now we're gonna jump back a little in time, back all the way to September, where Karl says, you know what's f***ed? How good really good lawyers are. I have a new appreciation for how insane really good lawyers are. They are geniuses in a unique way. I believe my trial lawyer to be a genius. Such incredible geniuses that must have pulled the wool over his eyes for quite a bit of time up until he lost the case. And then suddenly they became the worst, stupidest, dumbest people that would never listen to him, and they're bad and stinky. And to really just bring that point to focus, I wanted to show you guys a post from Billy Mitchell. This is Billy Mitchell's actual Twitter account, and here he posts this message from Karl. I'm gonna read it off. So someone asks him, do you ever run scripts for videos like this past a lawyer, or is it not worth the expense? Karl responds quite calmly, no, I don't, because f*** lawyers and what they think. If I want to say something, I will say it. Letting other people tell you what to do. A lawyer will always tell you to say nothing. Who wants to live by that principle? You're right, who wants to live by that principle? I distinctly remember after getting into quite a bout of fisticuffs with my friend in kindergarten, the teacher asked us to keep our hands and feet to ourselves, but I couldn't live in a world where I allowed somebody else to decide for me what I was gonna do with my limbs. I then, with my newfound free will, jumped out of the second-story window in the classroom, landing into the asphalt parking lot below. I broke both my legs and fractured a growth plate in my wrist, but it wasn't about the thousands and thousands of dollars that my parents had to pay for the medical bills. It was about the principle that I choose to live by. Thanks, Karl. Jobst. But seriously, if a paid professional, someone that you literally had to crowdfund to pay for, is telling you to zip it, maybe listen to them. Maybe you should listen to them because they know what they're doing and they're not just kind of making stuff up. And maybe the lawyer is telling you that because you are directly screwing yourself and that lawyer over, and it's honestly just out of the kindness of their heart that they're even telling you not to say anything, because they could just be robbing you blind like you think that they were. But you're letting us know that that wasn't the case, being that they told you not to. For Karl to not run these videos past a lawyer and just uploading them, it's interesting. I mean, I'm glad to see a man living by his principles and sticking to that point. I can just kind of see why people are bothered that this man took a lot of people's money and then paid a lawyer to defend him while he himself was actively, seemingly sabotaging it. Now let's jump to the comments that the judge made about Mr. Jobst in the official court documentation. So the judge writes a little about Mr. Jobst. I have briefly described Mr. Jobst and his activities in the introduction. Mr. Jobst could not be described as a shrinking violet, nor as having any concept of tact or diplomacy. Both in his YouTube videos that were played to the court and in giving his evidence, he was self-confident, forthright in expressing his views, and he struck me as very hard to dissuade from a view, whether an opinion or as to the existence of a fact, once he had formed it. These character traits are clear in his videos, on occasions when he has been interviewed by other online producers, and in his demeanor and evidence in the witness box. And then he wrote this funny little blurb down here. Mr. Jobst also has a self-aggrandizing and perhaps self-protective tendency not to admit error and not to back down once he has taken a stance. This trait was clear from a number of things arising during the evidence. I have already mentioned one, his response to Apollo Legends' announcement of his settlement with Mr. Mitchell. Don't worry guys, I will never back down. He also demonstrated that trait in his videos about Mr. Mitchell, continually calling him a cheat and asserting that his legal proceedings against others and against Mr. Jobst in this proceeding were frivolous, bullying, and bound to be lost by Mr. Mitchell. So this was the perception of Karl that the judge had drawn from his demeanor, how he acted in court, as well as how he behaved in the YouTube videos where he was talking about this court case as well as the other ones that Billy has been involved in. I'm pretty sure it's a no-brainer for most people here to recognize that when you're in court, the judge having a bias is a very big deal. And the goal of having a judge not be biased is that they make a decision based on the facts and evidence. And Karl was making a point that this judge was clearly biased from this and other proceedings that he's done that are tangentially related or share similar concepts and stuff as previous cases that he's covered. I don't think that him describing Mr. Jobst as these things directly just implicates that he has a bias. This just sounds like the judge talking about how Karl has carried himself throughout the entirety of this court case. And that's no surprise. In his videos, he's very confident about winning against Billy and just actively calls him a scumbag. And on top of that, Karl probably would not have been talking with the viscosity that he had about Billy, about the case, anything like that, had he shown his lawyers the videos or ran it by them or asked for, these ideas about, what is okay and what isn't, or what's going to make this more difficult. In appearing to be incredibly unsavory and lacking all tact, especially when you're online talking about the person very negatively that you're going against in court, that's not going to play well when you're going into a defamation case where you're being accused of defamation. Karl has shown clear signs that he viciously dislikes Billy, and on top of that, as the judge pointed out, he's not really willing to admit error, which leans into more of this making the defamation case valid, that he might have just been touting this stuff or wasn't removing it or wasn't admitting to being wrong, which would in turn affect Billy's image. It's the most clear-cut case of you should have spoken to your lawyers more, the lawyers that you paid so much money for. But let's move on to the last thing that I wanted to show you guys. In my original video, I was a bit more charitable in regard to Karl and how he was taking care of, going about this court case and making videos. What I mean by that is he provided evidence with some clips that you can see in the video I made, and it was in reference to this idea that a lot of people had that he was kind of knowingly misleading the people that were donating to his GoFundMe about the nature of the case. A lot of people, including myself, thought that this case was about the records that Billy Mitchell held, about this idea that Billy Mitchell has cheated those records. Most people understood that as the reason that Karl was going to court against Billy. Karl tried to defend himself, saying, hey, I never said that this was the cheating thing. I never said that that was directly what it was about. And I alluded to the point that it was about. And for me, that kind of did feel like, oh, maybe I was just focused on it being the cheating thing, and I wasn't really paying all that much attention to, the points that he was making and trying to kind of talk around it. Well, someone posted a clip that leads me to believe otherwise. Shout out to Kung Fu Man 316. They say, Karl Jobst, I never said the trial was about Billy Mitchell cheating. Here's a compilation of 2 videos where he talks about the trial in depth, the latter months prior to it. He specifically says at 1:45 it was to get a judge to give an official ruling over cheating. And so now I'm going to play for you guys the specific moments where he's referencing the court case. It makes it sound a bit like it's about the cheating.
The world needs Billy to lose. Not only would Billy need to pay me a lot of money if he loses, but we will also have an official ruling by a judge on a lot of these issues. This is because this particular trial will be decided by a judge and not a jury. So a judge is going to examine all of the evidence, and a judge will give his ruling and opinion on all of these issues. So if a judge rules that Billy was exposed for cheating, this opinion will be cemented in writing and will carry a lot of weight. If Billy loses this lawsuit, the judge's opinion is going to be very damaging for him.
So that's him directly saying that the judge's ruling on the cheating is going to have a very big impact on Billy Mitchell, and it's going to be a big deal. That seems like a pretty clear-cut example. And look, maybe he's talking about that being a part of the lawsuit or whatever he was dealing with, but we very rarely even see them talk about that in the court documentation of this entire dispute, which was mainly centered around the comments that he had made about Apollo Legend and Billy being responsible for their death in some way. And with that clip, it's just kind of shifting the scales for me a bit. I'm interested to hear what you guys think, where that comes from. I've definitely kind of changed my tune in regard to Karl. I've been a fan of his work for a while. It's fun to watch his videos, and I liked this entire fight that he was having with Billy Mitchell because he just really made it sound clear-cut. He was taking a dub, and it wasn't the case. And it's been a bummer to find out, and the more that's come out, I'm left a bit more cynical and doubtful of Karl and his ability to defend himself or even give us the straight story of what's going on. But that's it for the video today. If you guys enjoyed this, please be sure to give it a like, consider subscribing. If you're new to the channel, you like Discord, like chatting, like playing video games, all that stuff, I'm gonna leave a link in the pinned comment down below. But that's it. I'll see you guys later. Adios, peace, bye, see ya.